Hi,
you.
Devin. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate taking all the time to talk.
Thanks for having me.
And I just wanted to kind of start this out usually is tell me a little bit about your journey, how you got to where you are, and what is your company focusing on?
Yes, my journey is somewhat unusual. I started off in customer support for tech companies, and that was really because my dream of being a fashion journalist went away very quickly after I graduated. When both journalism was going through its like perceived death, and I learned how difficult it was to get in the fashion industry. And so I went over to customer service and then sort of moved into content marketing and really didn't have an aspiration to be a CEO specifically. I just knew I wanted to lead. I felt a lot of reward from being a leader. And so I sort of moved through my content marketing career somewhat quickly, I would say, and then stumbled upon Animals, which is a content marketing agency. So it is a company doing the thing that is my dream in my life, and started off there as a director. And I think it was the second year I was there, we had an offsite with like a leadership offsite. And the then CEO went around the room asking all of us what we wanted with our careers. And I looked at him and I pointed right at him and I was like, I want your job. And later that year, I got it. So I
Yeah.
officially started in 2020, but found out in 2019. And it was so, unexpected journey to CEO, but one that I think was perfect for what I was doing because I was
I,
deeply passionate about the industry I was in.
I think that's pretty rare to point at a CEO and going, I want your job, and then getting it right after.
Yeah, I want to say I was lucky because I don't think that happens very often. So
I
it's
don't
probably
think
a
that happens
mix of
very
like,
often at all.
yeah. Especially since I would say there was a in between period where I sort of started my career in my 20s, obviously. And then around 26, I left and went to Bali for 2 years and was working for a birthing clinic and then traveled. Like I had this kind of like break in the middle. And so really my career didn't start till I was like 30, 31. And then I just moved quite quickly at that time.
That's
So,
fantastic.
yeah.
And and based on kind of the overall market right now, as we're kind of coming out of the pandemic, do you see your business expanding or contracting the next kind of 12 and over the next year?
We are already contracting only a little bit, but not nearly as much as you're seeing in tech. But we didn't have to do layoffs or anything like that. But because we were very smart about our business model, and we didn't overhire, but obviously, Animal serves the B2B SaaS industry, and B2B SaaS is sort of doing a flip flop from 2021. 2021 grew really fast. I mean, I was beating customers off with a state like, we had 3 months. I think customers were in like a 3-month waiting list just to get started with us. We're
Mm-hmm.
now seeing kind of the opposite. And so naturally, we are contracting a little bit. And I don't really see that. I think my goal is to get it to a place where we're sort of like flattening that out and just like lowering our expectations for growth, which we already had to reforecast this year. So
Interesting. And then would you say that has hiring and retaining good staff become more or less difficult?
hiring in 2021 was difficult for us as it was everyone. Retention has been very difficult, but flat year over year for us. So our
Yeah.
like, yeah. So 2021, it was higher than it ever was, but it hasn't really gone up in 2022 this year so far. So, but yeah, um, employee retention is very difficult because the things that should be working don't work. And I think that this workforce is really burned out, not necessarily because of work, but it's being attributed to work. And so the world has been a difficult place for the past couple of years,
Yeah.
and everyone's feeling it. And everyone's sort of using that as impetus to change their life, which I actually think is a really good thing Like, I think a lot of this turnover has been very positive. It's just really, really painful as a
It's
business owner.
disruptive and trying to get if your job is to run the company and you don't have people to do it, it's a little difficult to
Or there's a lot of turnover for our customers. We're a people business. Our customers are like, why are we getting new people all the time? This is not something that we experienced before. So, and then of course there's the frustration around like, you're trying to do all these things to retain people. We're also competing against tech salaries. So, we produce these amazing content marketers, and then they can get, probably 2 or 3x working at a tech company, et cetera. So it is, it's very, very challenging right now.
And along the same lines, in what departments are you experiencing the most challenges?
Creative, absolutely creative. Yes. And I've heard that from other agency owners as well. They're like, it is really, because think about it, a creative's, their whole job is in like being able to envision things, being able to have ideas, right? And if they're struggling and they're not happy, it's going to be really hard for them to do that. That's going to burn them out. It's going to stress them out. And they're like, they self-destruct basically, and understandably so. Even as a leader, it's been challenging to maintain energy.
And I think obviously my engineering background doesn't give me too much insight into the creatives sometimes, but at the same time we work with a lot of them, and it just the things that motivate, and in a very structured environment that needs to be high deadlines or all that sort of stuff, it does crush their spirit a little bit.
Oh yeah, and enough to and change is often for creative, probably, I hate to say this, but it's probably one of the best medicines for what they're feeling, which again is a shame because it's hard for companies and it's hard for the company's customers, but they need a shot in the arm to be able to feel creative again. And what they've been working with the past few years, as with everyone, has not been too inspiring. So
and you kind of alluded to this, but are you experiencing a lot of wage creep then?
Yeah, but so yes. And this year, the willingness to pay from customers is different than it was last year, right? Because last year, everybody was just dying. Like, companies were having such a hard time hiring that they were leaning even more on agencies, which means that we were having a hard time hiring. So, prices got raised, but now this year it's sort of the opposite, right? They're letting go of their teams, they're letting go of their agencies. So willingness to pay has gone down. So it's an interesting balance where like employees want even more, but I can't raise prices anymore. I actually, we have to consider like, is it too high now? Right. And they're burnt out, so they can't work as hard. And so it's like this weird, like the scales are not coming into balance. And so the answer is yes. And it's been difficult to manage.
And that's really what's trying to bring someone's salary down based on what they've already achieved with the inflation. All that is not a easy thing to do.
Or just keeping it steady and trying to explain to people, people were asking us like, well, inflation. And so are we going to get raises? I'm like, that's not how a business works. Like, just because, there's only so much margin we have to work with as an agency, we're operating on lower margins to begin with. Right. And so you can't just say like, okay, inflation's here, like we're going to raise everybody's, like, that's not, we'd have no money left. Right. There's also other things that they want. And so it's just very much not simple. So it's also managing their expectations around wages, because even if they stay flat this year, that's still like a reduction in pay, right? And so very, very complicated stuff, I would say, in my first couple of years.
Yeah, I would say coming into COVID is not one of the easy ones to deal with. No. And would you say your sales cycle is longer or shorter?
Longer, absolutely. I mean, I'm telling you, last year customers would close in a week. Like, it was bizarre. I honestly raised prices. I was playing the Fed last year. I was like, look, you don't want to become known as an agency that's not available. So I'm like, look, fine. It's, and, so it was very easy last year. And this year it is definitely slowed down a lot. I think it's over for us. It was, I think 6 weeks or so, which is actually quite long for us.
Okay.
just
All
given
right.
our contract size. We're not doing, we're not, our contract size is low enough that it's not like that 6 weeks is a long cycle for us. It's not like we're doing like $50,000 a month or anything like that.
Okay. Okay. And then this is kind of more on the operations. Would you say you had a lot of clearly documented and recurring activities within your organization?
We were very well documented in our process and our policies. Yes. If you mean, what do you mean by activities? I guess like are there other things?
So, I mean, do you have certain like how do you decide about kind of your track your KPIs for your employees?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So like, and we've been refining that consistently over the years. So, we set company level OKRs that trickle down to each different like department and role and function. So very, very detailed. We use a software to manage it and sort of report against it. So there's sort of like the overall like top line KPIs, and then we use that to drive the individual KPIs for each role. And I would say we've only gotten better at that over the years. I think that when I look at other companies, we're doing it to like a greater level of diligence and specificity than I've seen from others. And I actually, to the point where I question whether it's necessary to that degree. I can't necessarily say with confidence that it
Adds value.
You need to, yeah.
There's a fine line between kind of monitoring and making sure things are happening. A lot of times you do that to get the data and the insight, but what are you really like? How often are you using that data insight to action? So
how much it take to maintain it? I would honestly say in a moment of self-reflection that I probably leaned on them and the perfectionism of them harder because of I was sort of newer in this role and thought, kind of wanted to prove that, it was a crutch more than I think it was necessary on reflection 2.5 years later. But I do very much believe in having those supporting processes and documenting it and sharing it with the team. It really does help keep them on track at a higher level, broader level versus like,
So. And I mean, for us, that's all we do. So we do a lot of back office operations. We do remote teams. And when you don't have them in an office, you need to be able to virtually manage. And if you don't have the right things that you're tracking and reporting, but at the same time, we reevaluate those on a quarterly basis to make sure, is this needed? And over time, it evolves, it changes. So to look at kind of KPIs just as one thing, it starts out that way, but it's an ever evolving thing because of the organization and how it changes as well.
Yeah, it's just tools for people to manage against, right? It's a way to open up. It's a way to give enable managers, and enable individuals in the team to be able to grow, right? It should be seen as like a pathway, and in addition to a source of measurement. And I think that we are on the right track. I think we've sort of gotten to that sweet spot this year.
That's awesome.
Moving better in that direction. Yeah.
That's great. And then last is, what is the biggest market prediction you have for the upcoming year?
Oh gosh. I would say don't try to plan anything for the rest of 2022. We are in 2022. Yeah. I think the rest of 2022 is going to be like it has been, which is like every week it's, every earnings season, every CPI report, every employment report, like they're sort of not consistent in terms of predictions. But I think next year is when we start to see like the thing, whatever the thing is, start to play out, which I'm very much looking forward to, because I would like a year in which I could plan around something consistent that's going to happen and be able to sort of make progress in one direction versus like constantly adjusting every year to a new thing, right? I came into 2022 and I was like, look, this is not going to be the antidote to 2021. It's going to be garbage. I just don't know how. And I feel like every quarter I'm like, oh, this, like, I don't know how again. And I don't know how again. I don't know how again. So I think that like my greatest prediction is kind of basic, which is like, I think we're just going to find out whatever it is that we're dealing with in 2023. Yeah. And it's going to be, there's going to be some like consistency. I just don't know what it is yet.
No. Well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate the insights, and that's super valuable to hear.
Thank you.